Okay, so you want to buy an airport, spend a few $1 billion, build some runways, let planes land and take off, and wait for the money to roll in. Sounds simple, but here's the strange part. An airport can handle tens of millions of passengers a year and still struggle to turn a real profit. The reason has almost nothing to do with how many planes land. It comes down to the tiny gap between what it costs to move a passenger through the airport and what that passenger actually spends while they're there. By the end of this video, you'll know how airports actually make money, why a few dollars per passenger matters, and why some airports are worth fortunes while others get shut down. Airports come in very different sizes, and they're three completely different businesses. A small regional airport might handle a few thousand passengers a day, still enough to keep a local economy connected. A mid-size airport can handle tens of thousands of passengers a day, running dozens of flights to cities across the country. Then you have the giants. Hartsfield-Jackson in Atlanta handles more than 250,000 passengers on a single busy day. At that scale, you're no longer running a terminal, you're running an industrial city. The runways cost billions, the supply chain stretches across continents, and even a tiny change in revenue per passenger can mean hundreds of millions of dollars a year. But buying the airport is only the beginning. The first cost nobody warns you about is getting permission to operate it. An airport sits under some of the strictest safety and regulatory rules in the industrial world, needing approvals for airspace, noise limits, security screening, fire response, and dozens of other systems. And then there is the equipment itself. A modern airport can require billions of dollars in upgrades just to meet changing safety and capacity standards. One new security rule can turn a perfectly working terminal into an obsolete one. You can own the land and the runways, but without the right approvals and safety systems, your billion-dollar machine is basically a very expensive stretch of concrete. But regulation isn't the only thing that can hold an airport back. The second wild card is location. An airport needs passengers coming in and planes going out, and both have to make economic sense, which means highways, rail links, cargo routes, nearby cities, and enough open land to expand. Get one piece wrong, and ground access alone can strangle demand. An airport near a major population center has a huge advantage, while one hundreds of miles from any city might struggle to fill a single daily flight. And here's the strange part. Moving an airport is basically impossible, so when a region grows or shrinks, you're stuck with the location you chose. In this business, geography can be worth billions. An airport does not make money by simply owning runways. It makes money by changing what a passenger is worth once they walk through the door. Imagine a passenger who pays $40 in landing and passenger fees, then spends another $60 on parking, food, and shopping while waiting for their flight. That passenger just generated $100 of total revenue. Now multiply that by 50,000 passengers every day, and that's $5 million before paying for staff, security, maintenance, and debt. Airport operators call this split aeronautical and non-aeronautical revenue, and it's the heart of the entire business. The owner is constantly watching two things at once: what airlines will pay to land here and what passengers will spend once they arrive. The gap between them is where the money lives. Here's the part most people get wrong about airports. They think ticket money is where the profit comes from. It doesn't work that way. Landing fees are often thin and heavily regulated, so the real profit usually comes from everything around the flight. Parking might be strong today, retail might be stronger tomorrow, and real estate around the airport could suddenly become valuable when a new business district appears nearby. An airport operator can adjust leases, retail space, and parking capacity to capture some of those changes. That's why major hub airports are so valuable. They support a wider mix of retail, cargo, and real estate income. The twist is the airport isn't chasing passenger volume, it's chasing revenue per passenger. Now look inside the machine. An airport is basically a giant industrial city built around one job: moving people and cargo safely. Planes arrive through controlled airspace and move through gates, taxiways, baggage systems, and security checkpoints. Some terminals stretch longer than several city blocks, and thousands of sensors, cameras, and radar systems are constantly monitored from control towers around the clock. That's important because an airport makes money while planes are moving through it. When operations stop, the revenue stops too. A major weather shutdown or system failure can cost millions in lost fees and retail sales before you count the disruption costs. That's why airports schedule major construction years in advance. The goal isn't to build the biggest terminal, it's to keep the machine running safely, reliably, and almost non-stop. An airport also needs something just as important as runways: buyers. The biggest airports don't wait for airlines to show up. They build long-term relationships with airlines, cargo carriers, retailers, and ground transport companies. Some space is leased through long-term contracts, while other slots and gates are negotiated as demand shifts. The same goes for cargo. An airport wants reliable freight partners that keep planes flying even when global trade gets messy. The best airport isn't the one with the most runways. It's the one connected to the best network of airlines, retailers, and cargo carriers. In this business, relationships can be worth almost as much as concrete. And then there are the really big buyers. An airport doesn't need millions of individual passengers to negotiate with. It needs a handful of major airlines committing enormous amounts of traffic again and again. A single airline can move thousands of flights through a hub every year. Losing one major hub agreement can hurt more than losing thousands of individual travelers. But locking one in gives an airport predictable traffic for decades. The airport still has to negotiate carefully, since a huge airline can push hard on fees. At this scale, one hub agreement can be worth billions over its lifetime. So, here's the whole airport business in one sentence. Revenue per passenger multiplied by passengers handled, multiplied by operating days, minus staffing, maintenance, debt, and security costs. Every major decision inside the airport comes back to those numbers. Attract airlines, handle as many passengers as safely possible, maximize retail and parking spending, keep operations running, control costs, and avoid expensive disruptions. An airport handling 50,000 passengers a day with strong retail spending looks like a money machine. But if a major airline pulls out or a recession hits travel demand, the picture changes completely. The same giant terminal can suddenly struggle to cover its debt. That's why airport operators obsess over passenger numbers every morning. The machine is enormous, but the profit lives in a small gap between what it costs to serve a passenger and what that passenger actually spends. So why do airports fail if people always need to travel? Usually it comes down to debt and bad location bets. Take Ciudad Real Airport in Spain, built to be a major hub south of Madrid with runways big enough for the largest planes flying at the time. But it never attracted enough airlines or passengers, and the debt became impossible to manage, so it closed within a few years of opening. Then there's Brandenburg, meant to open years earlier but delayed by construction failures and cost overruns that ballooned into billions before a single scheduled flight ever landed. These stories show the real danger. An airport can have enormous capacity and still become a financial disaster when debt, poor location choices, and weak demand hit at once. So, how much can you actually make? Let's use two scenarios. A smaller regional airport handling around 5,000 passengers a day might generate tens of millions in annual revenue. If retail and parking spending stay strong and costs are controlled, the owner could make a few million in annual profit. Now go to the other extreme. A giant hub airport handling around 200,000 passengers a day can generate billions in yearly revenue. In a strong market, profits can reach hundreds of millions. But here's the catch. Those numbers can swing wildly when airlines pull routes, demand drops, or debt payments come due. The biggest airport owners aren't simply selling runway access, they're managing one of the world's most expensive machines. In this business, millions of passengers flow through the gates, but only the margin becomes yours.